Greetings and welcome to Legacies of Wavryn, Lore of the Endelment. This will be chapter 41 of this reading. I tried to get myself over the balcony wall to go down there and stop everyone, but Baraku just jolted outside to grab my tail and pull me away from doing so. He then let go and said, "Sorry, my lord, but you're in no condition to fight right now, so please, just sit this one out." Though I had to stop Wolf, I knew Baraku was right. I wouldn't be able to raise a finger towards her without hurting myself. So I had no choice but to watch from a distance, while Baraku hopped up to place his front paws on the balcony wall so he could examine the fight with me. Wolf ran up behind Amber and punched her left fist in an upward motion into the half-blood's lower back, using enough force to break her fist out the center of Amber's stomach. At the same time, Wolf grabbed Amber's right arm with her own right hand and twisted it back to pop it out of its shoulder joint. In surprise, Fox and Jewel looked over to see what Wolf had just done. Then the Alikins pulled her left arm out from the half-blood to toss the damaged woman aside to the left. Wolf stood up straight as she stared down at the half-blood and said, "I'll deal with you later." She then looked up at Fox with an angry expression and continued, "As for you." Fox turned around to face her friend in joy and said, "Thank you so much for saving us, Wolfie." "Shut your mouth," Wolf barked. "I didn't come here to save you." Fox's ears bent down while she took a step back with her left foot and asked, "What do you mean? Well, don't you dare call me that again. You're obviously not fit to be my friend. Otherwise, you would have figured out what really matters to me." "Please, don't hurt me. I'm sorry for what I've done to make you so angry." Jewel motioned herself to stand in front of the frightened Alikins and said, "Calm down, Wolf. She's not your enemy." Wolf gave a sinister smile, then said, "Well, of course not. I murder my enemies, so I'm not going to kill her, oh no." The Wolf Alikins jolted towards Jewel, and with her right fist, struck the half-blood hard in the stomach to stun her. She then quickly spun around from her right to back-kick with her right foot into Jewel's head, tossing the half-blood into a building across the street from the park. Wolf turned back to Fox and stepped closer just to grab Fox's collar tight with her left hand, then looked straight into her eyes with a hateful gaze and said, "I'm going to make you suffer for what you've done. Being able to live is just part of it." Fox began to cry as she said, "Please, Wolfie, stop. I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't make up for what you've done," she barked as she shook the Alikins. "You let my daughter die right before my eyes. And to make matters worse, to insult me, you decided to save someone that you don't even really know." After a few seconds of holding myself up onto the wall, I said, "Baraku, we have to stop them." "Yes, my lord," the Haroga complied. "But you cannot shut up and just help me. I don't care for my health if I'm forced to see Wolf like this." "Yes, my lord." I coughed again, then forced myself to stand up on my feet and said, "Please, just go down there and get Amber and Jewel out of the crossfire." "You sure you don't want me to stop Wolf?" "No, I'll stop her. The only way I know how at this point." Coughed up more blood, then wiped it away from my mouth as I said to myself, "I need Shattuck for this." Causing me to jump in surprise, both Shadow and Light responded, "At your service, my lord." Before I had a chance to glance back, they both moved from the apocalyptic blades and fused their souls with my own. With that, I changed to Shattuck as Baraku and I stepped up onto the balcony wall and jolted down to stop the fight, leaving the weapons behind. Just as we started down, Wolf noticed us coming and fended us off. Still focused on Fox, the Wolf Alikins quickly raised her right hand up to the right side of her head with her palm flat and created a very large barrier that covered most of the park in a translucent magenta dome that reached 40 feet high. Barako and I tried to break through the barrier, but even with our powers, we couldn't crack it, not even scratch it. Luckily enough, Jewel was able to drag her sister out of the barrier before Wolf raised it. Yet shortly afterwards, the half-blood fainted, leaving the Haruga to carry both of them back to the hotel. Just as Wolf put up the barrier, she lowered her right arm and tossed Fox back. She then jolted over to the Alicans and slammed her right fist into Fox's stomach. Fox spat up a handful of blood. Then as Wolf pulled her fist away, she said, "Just like you did to Bunny. I'm not going to let anyone come and save you from this beating. I'm going to make you feel the pain that I felt." Wolf laughed at that, then continued, "But of course, the only pain you'll be feeling is simple outer pain. So this might take a while." Crying hard and barely able to speak, Fox pleaded, "Please, Wolfie, I'm sorry. Please stop." Wolf quickly pulled her right fist far back, then struck Fox's stomach again as she shouted, "Shut up!" She then pulled her fist away and took a couple steps back as she stood herself up straight, looking down at Fox with a vicious glare as she said, "Go ahead, dear old friend. My best friend. Get up." Fox turned to brace herself up onto her hands and knees, yet once she did, Wolf kicked with her right foot hard into the right side of Fox's chest. Fox yelped and fell back onto the ground, while rolling onto her back again, as Wolf yelled, "Get up, I said! Get up!" She then gave one hard stomp with her right foot into Fox's lower intestines and shouted, "Get up so I can knock you back down!" In her love for Wolf, Fox didn't wish to fight back. She didn't want to do anything against her friend's wishes, regardless of how mean she was. Fox just took the punishment given. However, she did try every now and then to run away, but with the beating she was getting, she felt she might not ever be able to move at all. Fox tried one more time to stand on her hands and knees again, yet in just a split second after she turned away, she collapsed and just laid on the ground in pain. Having no choice but to watch the Fox Alicans struggle, I flew down and jolted over to the left side of the park, hoping with the closer distance that I could communicate with either Wolf or Fox better. However, not long after I moved over there did I realize that JJ was standing just to my left, watching the assault without a care. It was a horrible sight, even for me to see. I could hardly stomach it. Even though Wolf wasn't going to kill Fox, she didn't need to go that far with it. Fox didn't deserve that kind of punishment, no matter what she had done. I wasn't going to stand for it. Wolf knew better. I had to stop her. If it really came down to it, I would have no choice but to obliterate her. Knowing that I couldn't break through the barrier, Wolf continued to beat up Fox as I still tried to punch through it, as pointless as that was. But I had to try. Though I used all of my strength to try and punch through the shield with my right fist, nothing happened. After the fifth strike, I tried using one of my tails to pierce through it, while I angrily said, "Damn it! Why can't I break through?" "Because it's Wolf's barrier," JJ replied, standing with his arms placed behind his back as he watched with his usual blank stare. "She's too skilled in her ability to protect. That includes when she paralyzed you when you got out of control." We then looked over at each other as he continued, "No one, from what I know, has ever broken through even one of her barriers. That's one of the main reasons why she became your family's servant." I turned and struck the barrier with two more of my tails, while JJ said, You're not going to break her barrier, Shattuck, no matter how hard you try. Ignoring what the ancient had said, I used the rest of my tails to strike the barrier all at once, so I started rapidly punching the barrier as well. JJ just shook his head, turned back to watch both Alikins. After a minute, I stopped trying to punch through and lowered my tails, while JJ said, "Sometimes I wonder if you even use that brain of yours, or even those things called ears." I looked over at the ancient in anger and said, "Shut the hell up, Jericho. You're not helping." "Oh, don't worry, Shattuck. That day will soon come. In the meantime, though, I suggest you find a way to stop your precious wolf." JJ then turned to his right, started walking away as he said, "Best to try out some of your new tricks, if you know any, that is." I heard something as if someone had slammed into the ground hard. Then I turned back to see Wolf forcing Fox's face into the dirt with her right hand. While I stood there, feeling helpless to save Fox, I wondered, what could I do to cut through Wolf's barrier? Oddly enough, even in this horrible situation, I remembered back to when I first met Wolf. She was beautiful. Hadn't changed through both her years and mine. However, at 16, I actually didn't give a crap about her, since Wolf was Father's personal servant at the time. So, of course, I never spoke to her, or for that matter, acknowledged her presence. In fact, I just didn't care about anybody when I was growing up, except, of course, her mother and grandpa. Wolf was even nicer than I had expected when I first met her, and oddly enough, she grew onto me and somehow decided to be like me a little bit through her years. It was a Monday when Father decided to have one of his usual dumbass lineups for the family, checking in on things to see if anything new had happened. Of course, with it being a Monday, I was in a very bad mood, as it is, not including having to speak with Father. Once everything was settled, Father turned away from us to let us know he was done talking. However, just as he did, he said, "Zaec, my son, please stay for a moment." Irritated, I asked, "By the Creator and all things godly, what now?" "Stay your tongue, Rayakin," he barked as he turned around to face me again, while everyone else left the throne room. "You will respect the gods and only speak of them in grace. Nothing more." "Whatever," I said, looking away to my right. "Is this going to take long? I still have something to do today." And then looked back at him and very quietly said, "Jackass." "What was that?" Before I was subjected to a punch to the throat, Wolf quickly called out, "My lord." Father glanced over his left shoulder at the Alikins, while she calmly continued, "If I may say so, you don't have much time. You still need to help out Sector 10 on Quarhen with their Kexan problem." Father calmed down as he nodded his head slightly and looked around for a bit, while he said, Yes. Very well then, Wolf." He then looked back at me and continued, "Thank you. We're not here for anyone's punishment, so whatever he said doesn't mean anything." "Idiot," I quietly said. Wolf and I glanced over at each other as she gave me a quick wink and smiled. Yet I just turned my head to my left and looked away. Father walked down the small flight of stairs from his throne towards me, then motioned with his left hand for Wolf to follow. Moving to stand about 3 feet from me, Father said, "My son, I feel it is time that you understand that not all of your battles can be won on your own." "Don't care," I bluntly said, not really even paying any attention. "Well, One day you will. And before it becomes too late, I am appointing our family servant to be your loyal bodyguard. That's dumb. Dominic turned for a moment to glance back at Wolf, then faced me again and continued, Wolf will forever obey your commands and fight by your side till the end of your days, as she has been trained to. But you must be trusting and loyal to her as well, my son. For teamwork can only be so if you two learn to co-op with one another. Moron. I can see that you are not very intrigued by my actions. Actually responding to him, said, not even the slightest. Father just gave me a blank stare as he stood silent, then sighed as he said, very well. He then turned away as he placed his hands behind his back and said, as king, my order is for you to have no choice but to let Wolf accommodate you until you get over your selfishness. What? I yelled. That's total bullshit. I still have things to do. Well, you should have thought of that before. Father turned back to me as he raised his voice and shouted, you decided to act like a child. I am a goddamn child, you stupid fuck. With that, Father grabbed my coat's collar to pull me closer as he yelled, enough of your insolence, Rayakin. Get out of my throne room before I start to get angry. He then pulled me back for leverage to throw me forward and out the door of the throne room and shouted, be gone. Not only did he throw me out of the room, but he threw me out of the palace entirely. Complete asshole. I landed on my back and slid for a moment, where I stopped near Eyeless's right side just before the large flight of stairs that went down from the palace to a great big city below. My elder brother was sitting on the first few steps down, just facing out over the city in his uncaring state. Without even so much as a glance at me, Eyeless said, that's the 10th time this week, Zaec. Shut the hell up, I barked, crossing my arms over my chest as I laid on my back, unaffected by what happened. That old bastard's gonna get an ass whooping from me one of these days. I motioned myself to sit about 3 feet from my brother's side to stare out at the city in anger, while he responded, keep telling yourself that, little brother. You know it won't happen. Bite me. After a few seconds, Wolf walked outside and just stood behind me in silence, waiting for me to say something. Sat and stared out at the city for a little longer, then turned to look over my left shoulder at the Allicans and asked, what do you want, bitch? Wolf just looked down at me with a blank stare and said, I'll let that one slide. I'm here because of your father's orders. Best get used to it, my lord. Piss off. I then turned back to look out towards the city and said, I don't give a crap about you or my father. Well, that's too bad, because I'm here till the day one of us dies. Plus, I can't leave till you've learned to respect me, my lord. Very well then. I stood up and turned to the Allicans and gave a fake smile as I said, I'm sorry for being so rude to you, Wolf, and I pray that you'll forgive me. That being said, I'll give you my first order. Wolf looked at me, confused, but began wagging her tail as if happy and said, very well, my lord. What is it? I quickly became angry and replied, you're free to leave me and my entire family alone. Neither I nor anyone else in my bloodline commands you anymore. So again, piss off. I then turned away and started heading down the stairs towards the city as I said, I don't want to deal with you right now, nor ever again. I have things to do. About 20 steps down, with exactly 1,980 to go, quietly said, stupid bitch. Wolf just stood shocked at what I had said. Then she grew angry. She watched me walk off. I didn't really have any plans that day. I just didn't want to be bothered by anyone. It was a Monday, so I didn't care for anyone's presence. Any other day of the week, I would have been okay to others. However, it was also a roundup day for Father, so maybe it wouldn't have mattered. Oh well. On Bodor, when I had nothing better to do, I'd go through a small and simple routine. Walk around until I was tired, or until someone wanted to pick a fight with me. And being both the prince of the empire and one of the toughest fighters, that happened usually once every day. Afterwards, I'd just head back home and sleep for the rest of the day. Since I didn't pay attention to people back then, I was completely unaware of the Kexans that were following me since I entered the city. Halfway into the city, I was knocked out by one of them. Then after a few minutes, finally awoke to find myself on my right side on the ground. Just as I came to, one of them, a male with an accent, asked, "How shall we deal with him, Janine?" "Well, we can't kill him," the woman replied, "because that bastard king of his won't believe we've done anything." "That's fucked up, man." "Hey, Janine," second male called out. "Watch it, he's waking up." I pushed myself up onto my hands and knees. Janine said, "Well, well, well, look who's finally awake. Hello, Prince. Or as your famous grandpa would say, good morning, Ray." Found myself in a large dark room that seemed to have no way of getting in or out of it. The two men at the other end of the room, in the corners, as Janine stood over me. I moved away from her to stand against the Kexans, then motioned to punch the woman. However, she just grabbed my fist with her left and used her right to shove me against the wall. The two men in the back chuckled, then immediately went quiet as Janine quickly shushed them. Staring at me, the woman said, "Now just be a good little boy, Ray, and nothing bad will happen." I kicked my right foot square into Janine's left kneecap to break it back, which got her to release her grip on me and allow me to beat her up on the ground for a few seconds. However, with just a couple punches in, the other two Kexans jolted over to brace me up against the wall once more. I grabbed the arms that the two Kexans used to hold me down with my own hands, using my powers to send a fearsome electric amp to both Kexans. The attack forced the two guys to bounce away from me, knocking them out, yet I utterly drained myself of more than half of my energy in doing that. I broke myself out of the wall just as Janine had fixed her knee. Then as she moved to kneel down, I did a hard upward kick with my right foot into her jaw. She flipped back in about 4 feet. Then I tried to jolt over to kick the right side of her head with my left foot. Before I could, she grabbed my left ankle with her right hand and braced herself to halt me, while she called out, "Erase!" Janine and I somehow ended up back in the city, in the center of a double-lane roadway. Of course, our streets were only built for racers, like myself. Thankfully, no one was using it. Janine stood up and spun around from her right to throw me down the street about 20 feet, where I crashed into the pavement. After the impact, I stood up and motioned into my fighting stance. I just let the rubble of the pavement fall from my body. The Kexan watched me with a light smile and asked, "Stubborn little brat, aren't you?" Irritated that the woman wasn't using her full potential, seeing as she was trying to keep me alive for some stupid purpose, I bluntly said, "You'll regret messing with me, cunt." As to be expected, Janine quickly grew angry from what I said, responded, "Better watch your mouth, imbrick." She raised her hands up from her sides as she channeled a massive amount of energy into both of them, which formed black spheres at the base of each hand. She then brought both blasts together in front of her to combine the two into one, doubling in size as she aimed it towards me. She readied for the Zenbai Kyo technique, a strong yet very hard to control and unpredictable attack. Most only used one hand for it, but that was what made it difficult. It was easier to handle with both hands, yet normally took longer to charge and required stable footing to brace for the initial firing. Just as she connected the two blasts into one, Janine yelled, "Zenbai Kyo!" The blast quickly changed into a bright white sphere and grew to be 15 feet, which shot out towards me as it made a small sonic boom. However, before I could try to fight back, a magenta wall about 5 feet wide and 7 feet tall rose from the ground in front of me and shielded me from the attack. The blast that was created broke away and disappeared, with both the wall and I perfectly intact. The Kexan stood up and looked around as she yelled, "Who's the bastard that did that?" Just then, Wolf jumped over from my right and stood in front of me just behind the wall, as if to protect me as well, while another person teleported in front of Wolf's barrier. I was amazed to see that it was Grandpa, seeing as he was usually busy with random war zones that were constantly waging at the time. Standing in defense of us, Grandpa said, "Very good, Wolf. Just stay with Ray till I've finished with this traitor." Janine looked over at us and yelled, "I'll blow you all to pieces and burn your remains." Not long after Wolf and Grandpa appeared, did the other two Kexans from before step in as well, both behind us, as each got ready to fire a large energy blast from one of their hands. Sensing their presence, I turned and charged a blast of my own to counter them, but Wolf shoved me behind her as she turned to face the two Kexans and raised another wall with her left hand to keep them from harming us. Like before, their blasts did nothing but ignite on impact of the wall and didn't damage anything. As she stood in between me and the second wall, Wolf said, "Don't worry about these fools, my lord. We'll deal with them for you." Just as it got to that point, my mind went blank on what happened next, and I just shook my head to focus on reality. While I remembered when I first met Wolf, the angry Alicans continued to bash her fists into Fox's body anywhere she could. Some even threw it. Even though Wolf continued to strike, Fox never raised a finger against her friend. She was so desperate to keep her friendship together that she just let Wolf get her anger out, which was not what needed to be done. After a few minutes, Wolf stopped attacking and shouted, "Fight me, you lazy bitch! This isn't fun anymore!" Fox stood up in her full animal form, with her left side towards Wolf, as she looked over with only her left eye, the right held shut with a mixture of dirt and blood. Once she looked over at Wolf, she responded, "No, I'm not going to." Wolf growled, then she changed into her full animal form and said, "Then this is going to hurt. A lot." Wolf jolted and grabbed Fox's neck with her mouth, while forcing them both to roll along the ground. At the end of the fourth roll, Wolf used her right paw to slam down on Fox's chest and bit hard on her neck. Fox gave out a loud and painful yelp as she struggled to get free of Wolf's grasp. It came nowhere close to breaking away. After a few seconds of hearing Fox yelp, Wolf let go of her neck, looked down at the broken Alicans and said, "That's it, bitch. Feel the pain. That unbearable pain." Then bent her head down to put her face nearly up against Fox's as she continued, "You know what that pain is? It's the pain that I had to feel, knowing that my beloved daughter is dead." She then raised her voice and yelled, "Killed by your hands. Slaughtered by your actions." As Wolf stood over her, Fox just looked to the ground, crying out bloody tears while listening to the hateful speech. Then, as Wolf yelled at her, Fox looked up and tried to speak so that she could get Wolf to stop. However, Fox Alkins couldn't get a word out because of the pain that she had to deal with. After Wolf's yelling, Fox used all of her strength, said, I'm sorry, Wolfie. Shut the fuck up! Wolf quickly raised and swung her right paw to slash Fox across the face, slamming her head into the ground a bit. She then struck her right paw down on Fox's head to brace herself up, slowly crushing the Fox Alican's head into the ground. A few seconds passed, then Wolf moved her paw away and went to bite down on the neck again even harder. Once more, Fox went into a yelping fit of pain as she struggled to get away. Afterwards, Wolf raised her up, then jerked her head to the left side so she could throw Fox, actually sending her towards me and having her bounce a couple times before stopping just before the barrier wall, Fox yelping on each flop. When I watched the Alican slide up to the edge of the barrier, I noticed the dirt that was pushed away by her back was able to easily move out of the barrier. That's when I finally remembered exactly how to break through. That's how it happened. Back when Wolf put up the second wall to protect me on Bodor, Grandpa was thrown out to the side and into a building from Janine. The Kexan then tried to break Wolf's wall with the same Zenbaikyo technique, but the wall just simply stood its ground as the blast continued to force itself against it and try to reach us. I walked up to the wall and raised my right hand up to feel it as I quietly said, "This is awesome." Wolf heard that and turned back to see me place my hand on the wall, where she quickly yelled, "My lord, stop!" However, it was too late. I placed my hand onto the wall and accidentally pushed it through. Before I knew it, my hand reached outside and was forced back by the blast. Without realizing it, I had somehow pulled the blast through the wall as well. I had to use quick thinking in order to keep myself from being blown away from the attack, but Janine at the time was far more powerful than me. Her attack was slowly pushing me back as I tried to brace myself against it. Amazingly enough, Wolf stepped in and connected her hands at the bases of them to use all of her power to counter the attack with a light blue energy surge, pushing the blast back. She sent both attacks back towards the Kexan. Then Wolf's blast broke away Janine's and completely blew the Kexan into nothing. Or so I thought at the time. Wolf cancelled out her attack and dropped to her knees as she passed out from using her energy, the barriers also disappearing from where they stood. As she fell forward, I knelt down to catch Wolf in my arms. Luckily enough, Grandpa had actually killed off the other two Kexans just before the walls gave out. He then came to me and said both hello and goodbye, only to take off elsewhere to continue his fighting. I took Wolf back to the palace and let her recover in my room as I waited out in the living room, where I simply watched through the crystal clear walls to look out over at another one of the major cities nearby. Mother, who was cooking in the kitchen just across from the walkway in between the two rooms, joyfully called out to me, "Zaec, dear, what happened to you today?" My eyes still aimed out through the crystal, I calmly responded, "You got into another fight, Mother. Don't worry about it." "Don't worry about it?" she yelled as she quickly grew angry at me. "Damn it, Zaec. If you keep this up, you won't live past 100. Though I wasn't trying to be mean to Mother, I just calmly and carelessly said, "Yes, Mother." "Don't you yes, Mother me, mister. I don't want to see one of my children end up leaving this house and never coming back to see their dear old loving mother. You hear me?" Still trying not to get too involved with the arguing, I again said, "Yes, Mother. I have worked too hard to keep your father, you, and your brothers afloat from the wreckage that you boys keep getting yourselves into." Yes, Mother. Why, if it weren't for me, I bet none of you, not even your father, would be able to live even past 30. Got that? In a means to correct Mother, as I usually had to do from time to time, while in my same tone I said, "He's 100 years older than you, Mother." Mother calmed herself down a bit as she ended the conversation with, "My point remains valid." Yes, Mother. Just then, Zaec sat down on the left-hand side of the leather black couch that I was sitting on. He got comfortable by placing his feet up onto the gold and silver coffee table, while crossing his right ankle over his left. As he relaxed, he turned on the 100-inch flat-screen TV to watch the rally racing on Cormor X, which wasn't much. And if you were wondering, yes, we and Wavryn are far more advanced than those dumbass humans on simple Earth. All of us are always more advanced. We just chose to not advance too much technologically. Evolving in life all around is far more superior than just being smart. It's too bad humans don't see it that way. Once Zaec sat down, he glanced over at me, confused, then continued to watch TV as he asked, "What's Wolf doing in your room asleep, bro?" While I continued to stare out into the city, I replied, "Before you get any retarded ideas, no, nothing between us happened. I got into a fight, and she passed out wasting her energy." Wow, first day on the job with you and she's already had to save your ass. Bite me. Zaec quickly raised his hands up to his head for a few seconds as he said, "Fine, fine." After a few minutes, Wolf walked out and called me over to talk. Just as I neared the Alicans, she grabbed the right side of my coat, pulled me into my room. Then she shut the door. Wolf turned around to me with an angry expression as she let go of my coat and said, "You're a complete idiot when it comes to fighting. You know that?" I just stood up as I gave the woman a blank stare, at the time being perfectly eye level with her, and I said, "I could have handled it. Not my fault you used up your powers." Wolf quickly grabbed the left side of my coat's collar with her right hand and pulled me closer as she said, "You nearly killed us, you bastard. You can't touch the barrier walls from the inside. It's not completely stable." Well, if you had told me that sooner, then we wouldn't be arguing right now, would we? "Why you..." Wolf threw me over to my bed and slammed my head and back against the foot of the metal frame. Then as I picked myself up, she placed her hands on her hips and said, "I may be your servant, but you have no right treating me like this. Understand?" I stood myself back up and said, "For one, as a servant, you have no choice but to take each and every insult I have to throw at you. So don't think for 1 second that you deserve respect just because you live within the Shero dynasty." Wolf just growled at me. Then I continued, "Secondly, I already told you, you're free from being a servant. So you saving me and being here is just a waste of time. You're no longer a part of this family. So as I said before, piss off." Wolf started to shed tears, still giving her angry expression, as she said, "And to think I was nice to you. I kept your father from striking you down earlier today." "Excuse me?" I uncaringly asked. With that, the Alican slapped me across my face hard with her right hand, nearly making my eyes swell up with tears. She then grabbed my coat's collar, pulled me closer, nearly pushing our faces together. Wolf looked directly into my eyes with a very mean glare and said, "Now you listen to me, you ungrateful prick. I didn't bring you in here just so that you can insult me further. You're here because I don't give two shits what you tell me to do. I'm going to be here. Be it near, far, with, or for you, whether you like it or not. Because that's what I want to do. Got it? Just so I didn't get slapped again, I quickly nodded my head as a reply. Then Wolf said, "Good." The Alicans jerked her arm out to push me away about 2 feet, hitting my legs against the bed's metal frame but keeping me standing. She then lowered her hand, finally becoming calm. She gazed at me with a slight smile. Wolf waited a moment to examine my expression towards her. Then she said, "Now that we got that settled, I'll let you know once more. My special barrier can't be penetrated from the outside, no matter what hits it, and only in defense of where I placed it according to my position. But if anything inside wishes to motion out through the barrier, it has easy access. However, you can also pull things in from the inside, but you can't do it vice versa. Like when you reached out your hand and accidentally pulled in that Kexan blast. Just remember that when this type of thing happens again. Okay?" "Yes, ma'am," said, still a bit frightened from being slapped. Wolf's smile became more peaceful as she said, "Good." She then moved closer to me to wrap her arms around my waist while gazing into my eyes sensually and continued, "I knew you'd be a good little boy about it once I got your attention. Now let's reintroduce ourselves." Feeling a bit uncomfortable and nervous in my position, I said, "Sure, but could you step back a bit?" Wolf's ears twitched at that. Then she lowered her arms from me as she did what I asked. She raised her right hand up towards me slightly for a shake and said, "I'm Wolf, as you may already know." I carefully raised my right hand to shake hers and said, "Zaec, Shero. Sorry I was mean to you earlier." "Don't worry about that, my lord. And that's all behind us now." As we pulled our hands away from each other, Wolf tilted her head to her left side a bit, while she placed her hands together behind her and asked, "How come you didn't announce your title before your name like your father does?" "Well..." I sat down on the foot of my bed and looked down at the floor as I continued. "In a way, it doesn't matter to me. Kylus is most likely going to get the title of king with how he acts and with how father doesn't give a damn about me. Zaec's I'm not sure of, but I guess it's the same deal. But even if I find a wife, I'm still gonna be a prince till my elder brother is removed from the throne. Even still, I don't really care for my title much anyways." Interesting. Wolf then sat down next to my left side and continued, "And what about your grandpa calling you Ray?" "My middle name is Rayakin. I hate it. Father gave it to me. Mother gave me my first name. However, I do like how Grandpa thought to call me just by Ray." I then looked back up at Wolf and asked, "What about you? How come you don't have a last name? Every Alicans I've ever known had a last name." Wolf glanced over at me for a second. Then she looked down at the floor as she said, "Well, I never really had a family of my own. I was raised as an orphan from an adoptive family that took care of me until I was 14. Just the right age for an Alicans like me to start serving another family within the Empire. It so happened to be your family that took me in, my lord." She then looked back over at me. She raised her right hand up to pet the left side of my head, while she gently stroked my hair and said, "You're a lot cuter than I had expected." Slightly confused, I turned my head to look over at the Alicans and asked, "What?" Of course, I have to stop there. What happened next wasn't too important. Out of my daydream, I saw a fox get thrown around a bit again, then slammed down just at my feet from inside the barrier. However, she wasn't close enough. I glanced over at Wolf to see she was starting to get exhausted. Really good sign for me. I knelt down on my left knee to slightly move closer to Fox, while she just laid there on her stomach with her tail curled upright at the edge of the barrier. As she laid there, Fox whined in pain and cried her bloody tears. Keeping my eyes on Wolf to cautiously watch her, I quietly said, "Come on, Fox, get up. Just one more stand, this will all end." The Alicans just laid there in silence, stared at the ground with her left eye. But even so, I continued to try and get a reaction out of her. I looked down and said, "Please, Fox, stand up for yourself. Promise you this will all end." "I can't," she cried. "I know what I did was wrong. I have no other way of repaying Wolfie for her loss. My life is worthless." I glanced up at Wolf to see she had changed back into her half state and was knelt down on her left knee, staring down at the ground, panting. I then looked back at Fox and said, "Fox, give me your tail." Fox Alicans grew a light smile on her face as she chuckled, then she raised it to a laugh. However, her laughing got Wolf's attention, and the furious Alicans began gathering energy to continue the beating. I glanced back up to see Wolf look over and start to get even angrier than before, standing herself up as she forced her aura to spike around her body and flare wildly. She slowly walked towards us, her fists clenched tight and her fangs bared ferociously, which was even scary for me to see. Fox calmed down from her laughing, then I looked back down at the broken Alicans and said, "Come on, Fox, just wag your tail over to me, please." "Back off, Zaec," Wolf yelled. "Just 5 more minutes and I'll be done with her." "Damn it, Wolf," I barked as I looked up at the other Alicans. "Can't you see what you're doing is wrong? I'm sure Bunny wouldn't want you to be doing this, so leave Fox alone. She's had enough." Wolf stopped and raised her right fist up at me slightly and yelled, "How can you stand there and act as if Bunny's death means nothing to you? She was my daughter." Then moved her head back a bit. She lowered her hand and shouted at the sky, "My daughter!" Wolf looked back down at Fox as she opened her right hand to form a fist-sized energy blast into her palm. The blast was magenta on the outside, but had a pitch-black core the size of a golf ball, with white sparks blazing around it and several inch-tall spikes that swerved all around the edge. Once the attack formed, Wolf lowered her voice and said, "Don't worry. I'm sure this will be the last of it, but it will hurt worse than anything you've felt before." Just as she said that, the blast in her hand grew twice its size, while she pulled her hand back and continued to charge her energy into it. I glanced down at Fox to see that she had passed out. Then I stood up, quickly struck the barrier with my right fist as I yelled, "Fuck!" "Zaec," Wardrick called out to me. I glanced around, idiotically since the voice was in my head. Then as I looked back through the barrier, the dragon continued, "I know what can be done, but you've only got one shot." "Shot at what?" "Shatter." For a slight moment I thought, shatter? That's impossible. Unless... Nearly instantly, I forced over 80% of my dark powers to create the shatter into my right index and middle fingers, while I took a step back with my right foot to brace myself. I then looked over at Wolf, shouted, "It's over! This ends now!" I swung my right hand across my body and over my left shoulder. I called out, "Shatter!" Though I knew energy was a living being itself, it still surprised me that the shatter technique was able to crush Wolf's barrier with ease, like a sledgehammer against a thin sheet of glass. The barrier fell apart and dissipated into thin air, while Wolf motioned her right hand forward to fire her blast at Fox. I teleported to intercept the attack, calmly standing in defense after immediately changing into my Zaec state. Just as I appeared, Wolf shot her blast towards me with a punching motion, and the blast grew even bigger as it flew at nearly the speed of sound. But just before the attack could reach me, one of my 9 tails vanished and created a powerful 15-foot tall and wide translucent white wall, an inch away from me to deflect the strike. In a few seconds, Wolf's blast broke away and vanished. Then the wall disappeared and I jolted over to her with both of my fists clenched tight. I moved to stand just a foot away from her, hoping that she would forgive me for what I was about to do. But I had to stop her, even if it meant doing something that I swore to never do. Something that Father had done that sickened me to dare try. Pulled my right fist back and up far, with Wolf watching in fear as I raised my fist against her, then swung down to strike the top of her nose. At the same time, I yelled, "Bad dog!" Instantly, when I struck the Alicans, she changed back into her full animal form and gave out a very loud and painful yelp. She fell onto her stomach, her body nearly laid out on the ground as it flopped slightly. When that was done, there was nothing. Nothing but the quiet yet angry thunder above us, while the rain battered against our bodies, as if still carrying out the fight to stop us. After about 10 seconds, I started to cry and dropped to my knees as I unclenched my fists. Changed out of my form and back into my normal state, while Wolf looked up at me with a sad and pitiful expression in her eyes. She bent her ears down and whined. I regretted having made that decision, but I couldn't have just killed her. Not over this. Not for Bunny. Crying over what I had done, I said, "I'm so sorry, Wolf." She and I then looked directly into each other's eyes, so I continued, "But you wouldn't listen. I know I gave you your freedom, but what you were doing was horrid." As I calmed down, Wolf carefully stood up to step a bit closer to me. Then she rubbed her head gently up against my neck as she sat down. I softly grabbed her right paw with my left hand and said, "Please, Wolf, if you're going to continue to serve me, then you must learn to let things go. I know Bunny was a great loss to you, but she was my daughter too. We raised her together, so it was a great loss to me as well to see her vanish before me. It wasn't Fox's fault that we lost her. It was mine." I raised my right hand to pet the back of Wolf's head, leaning forward to place my forehead against hers as I closed my eyes. Forget about it, Wolf. Just be happy with Fox. Be happy, knowing that she, and all of us here, are a part of your pack. Besides, I then felt myself starting to black out again because of my slow recovery, but I put in a few last words and said, "She needs you right now, and I am truly sorry for what I had to do." Unable to hold on, I once again passed out and fell on my left side onto the ground. This concludes the reading of Chapter 41. Thank you all for watching and listening. If you like what you've seen and heard, there'll be a link to my physical works in the description below. That being said, stay safe, take care, and we'll see you again next week, reading Chapter 42.